Coming up on No Pulp, the college football playoff committee finally does something right.
I'm going to tell you why I could not disagree more with that, but either way, I'll make you some dollar bills, y'all. I've got great picks for college basketball and that CFP.
Yeah, we're hitting the books later in the show. Might earn you some money, let's just say, on the side. Plus, we have our picks for all the bowl games coming up on New Year's Day. It's No Pulp, and it starts right now.
I got this, I'm in it. I'm hella filthy, so I got this, I'm winning. Just try to stop me and you'll drop dead missing.
Welcome into the CitrusTV studios. I'm Matt Liberman, he's Drew Carter, and this is No Pulp, the show where we give the hottest takes and are probably wrong on every single thing that we talk about. But first, it's a great day. We finally know the result of the college football playoff committee, and we have our 4 teams. We have Alabama, the 1 seed, playing the number 4 seed, Oklahoma, and number 2, Clemson, facing off against number 3, Notre Dame. Drew, did they finally get the committee finally get this right?
That's the question everyone's going to be asking, Matt. Now, before I get into my steaming hot opinion, I got to ask, do you think they've messed this up in the past? Because it sounds like you do.
I think that they certainly have. I think that first year, Ohio State should not have gotten in.
They won the championship.
They did win the championship, but that doesn't mean that they should have initially gotten in. I would have gone with TCU or Baylor.
All right.
I think that last year was the first year that I pretty much saw the 4 teams, and I was like, okay, I can get behind this. This year, I don't think there was any argument.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm actually going to agree with you for once. Now, I want to go back to that Georgia-Alabama SEC championship game where UGA was winning for the majority. Yeah. Alabama comes right back to the exact opposite of what they did in the title game last year with Jalen Hurts replacing Tua. Kirby Smart, Georgia's coach, said this after the game. I want to get this right. Let me put my glasses on real quick. Give the coach across us a sideline. My bad. Let me start over. Give the coach across that sideline a vote for who he doesn't want to play. He'll start with us. I promise you he doesn't want to play us. I think that's true. I think everyone agrees that UGA is one of the 4 best teams, right? But the resume is what matters here because we're talking in hypotheticals when we say Georgia is one of the 4 best teams. The resume for Oklahoma is certainly one of the 4 best. I like the Sooners.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, when there was all this talk amongst the media, specifically a lot of people from ESPN after that game last night, a lot of people were saying,
Kirk
Herbstreit especially was saying, I don't know how you don't pick Georgia.
Yeah.
I think there's a simple answer. You have 2 losses. You didn't win your conference championship.
Right.
Oklahoma went out and they beat every single team on their schedule. I know they have the 1 loss, but they avenged that loss in their conference championship. There's no reason to say why this offense can't go out and beat anybody. A lot of people talk about the holes in the defense. It doesn't matter. If you can score 60 points a game, you're going to win the game.
Right. I'm pretty sure the Patriots won the Super Bowl a few years ago with literally the worst defense in the NFL.
Yes,
and Oklahoma could do the same thing this year in college football. Now, they have their first game against Alabama. You might see Alabama in the playoff and think, oh, great, the reigning national champions made the playoff again. They've got a chance to defend that. I'm here to say, not quite. Because UCF, again, got snubbed. 13-0 last year. I thought they were the national champs. This year, again, they're 12-0. They win their conference once again. I think they deserve to be in. We all know this. I mean, I've gone off about this before. Matt, what say you?
I think there's certainly more of an argument to be had. And this is the sad part. There's definitely a better case if McKenzie Milton never gets hurt.
Right.
Because he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in all of college football. He gets hurt. And obviously, look, they put up 56 points the other day. They didn't lose a whole lot off that offense, but it's just the fact of this guy is their leader, and now you take away their top weapon, really. I don't know how you can really make that case for them now to be one of the top 4 teams.
Here's the case, Matt. We just talked about how we think Georgia is one of the best 4 teams, but they don't make it because their resume isn't as good as Oklahoma's. I think the same case applies for UCF when Milton goes down. Their resume is deserving. They just scored 56 points with their backup quarterback in a conference championship game. They were losing for a decent part of that game against Memphis. I don't care who's playing. We think that they should be in because of their resume. When I say we, I'm talking about myself and the voices in my head who say this is ridiculous that UCF doesn't make it. Again, I sound like a broken record. We're now at 716 days since UCF last lost a football game. Honestly, I think the fact that Milton went down and Dariel Mack played so well and they still scored 50-plus is a bonus for their resume because we saw them lose a first-rounder and Mike Hughes, a cornerback, last year. They lose Shaquem Griffin, who was maybe their best defensive player to the draft as well.
He was their best player.
And so people might say that, well, you can't count last year because they lost those 2 guys and it's a different season. Why not? The infrastructure is the same. Their coach leaves and they're still undefeated. Their quarterback goes down, they still score 50.
Hey, here's what I'll say about this team. And one, I think that this is certainly a reason why we need an 8-team playoff system.
Of course.
Because Georgia clearly should be competing for a national championship. They showed that the other night. Ohio State has really come on at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And they're left out of this. And Michigan, you give Michigan another chance, I think that they could capitalize as well.
Yeah.
But these are all teams that we're going to be playing on New Year's. UCF, Michigan, a bunch of really good games. UCF, a really good chance to knock off LSU, I think.
Yeah, you know what stands out to me is that LSU versus UCF game. And UCF, I already said it. I mean, I think Mackenzie Milton is a Heisman contender. If he hadn't broken his leg, he should be going to New York with a vote. But Daryl Mack was so good. He rushed for 4 touchdowns in their conference championship game, ties the school record. I've got UCF stats for days, Matt. I think they're going to.
I know you do.
I really do expect them to beat LSU because I think their fans are going to travel. And I think it's fair to say that this game means a little more to UCF than it does to LSU.
It certainly does. I sorry to interrupt you, but I think that one of the other things to take into consideration with LSU is that you're going to have a lot more guys prepping for the draft, and that's just a matter of the fact.
Right.
Greedy Williams, who is a shutdown corner, easily the best corner in the country, might not play in this game. So what happens? You take away these weapons on defense that LSU uses to ball hawk. Suddenly you open up the offense. You open up the field for a team that likes to really run up and down the field. They can score in bunches. UCF can win this thing.
And if UCF does win this thing, I'm going to be even more annoying next year. I would suggest unfollowing me on Twitter.
Honestly,
if
they win this game, I'll be behind you. It's just a matter of the fact that.
Okay, so I know this wasn't the point of the argument,
Yes.
but why now and not last year after beating Auburn?
If they get it done twice, I think that.
They beat Cincinnati, who was ranked. They beat Pittsburgh by 31 points. They tried to schedule North Carolina, got scheduled.
If they do it twice, I'll be behind you. Hey, a famous man once said, "Fool me once, shame on you. You fool me, you can't get fooled again."
Yes, I do agree with that. So if UCF wins, you know I'm already behind them.
I know you are.
This should be a good game, though, against LSU. Now, we go from the New Year 6, talking about the most successful programs this year. Let's talk about the least successful programs this year and those teams that are looking for new head coaches. 7 Power 5 jobs opened up this offseason. 3 of them are already filled. Les Miles to Kansas, Mac Brown to Carolina, Matt Wells to Texas Tech. Matt, which of these available jobs, you see still 4 Power 5 jobs available, which one of those is the sexiest to you?
I would have to say either Louisville or Georgia Tech, probably Louisville. I mean, you look at Louisville, they are a historic program. They've certainly had it in the past. If I'm looking at those, the one that is definitely the one that I don't want to take is Maryland. And think about everything that's happened this past year with DJ Durkin and just the environment, the community there. I would not want to get anywhere close. I wouldn't go there with a 10-foot pole.
39.5-foot pole if you want to be festive.
Yeah.
Grinch stole Christmas. I agree with you. I think Maryland is toxic right now. I wouldn't want to go there, but I want to go back to a school that has already filled its head coaching vacancy, and that's North Carolina. I know with a soft spot in your heart, Matt, a noted North Carolina fan. Mac Brown is 67 years old.
I didn't understand this hire at all.
When he was at Texas in his last 4 seasons, they never won more than 9 games. They went 5-7 in one of those last 4 seasons. Mac Brown, again, he's literally a senior citizen. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand. He was broadcasting for ESPN, Matt. He got up and left in the middle of a game.
Yeah.
I wish I could make that up. He got up and left. I just don't understand how this is the right hire for them.
When I look at this, I don't see this as their long-term solution.
It can't be.
I see this as a temporary fix to establish a culture that people around the country, 15, 16-year-olds say, hey, that's a guy that won a national championship.
Sure.
I might want to go play there. You get him for 4, maybe 5 years, really revitalize the program.
Yeah.
Maybe one of his assistants comes in, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, then takes over.
Sure.
That's where I really see this going. I see this more of as a culture hire, which is what Maryland needs right now.
Here's what I'll say. I could win a championship with Vince Young. I'll just say that.
Yeah, you probably can.
He's too old. He's too old for this stuff. All right, so that's plenty on college football. When we come back, how about some college basketball talk? Those new NCAA net ratings came out. A lot of controversy around them. Here's a hint. Loyola Marymount is a top 10 team? Maybe not. We'll tell you why. Coming up next.
I was in foster care. I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. You're gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Go, bro. Okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. so much fun. Mwah.
Welcome back to No Pulp. Time for some college basketball. Those new net ratings, so they're a thing. They're not a great thing. When you look at the net ratings right now, Belmont and Loyola Marymount ahead of Kansas, and Kentucky doesn't even crack the top 60. Not ideal.
San Francisco is a powerhouse, though. You gotta.
Oh yeah, sure.
You gotta give them a nod. They're 6-0. My question with these net ratings is, first of all, what's the acronym? Do you know the acronym?
No,
I'm pretty
I don't.
sure there is, but props to the NCAA for coming up with a cool acronym. That's about the only good thing I can say about these ratings. Now, I don't want to be just a classic bandwagoner and pile on the NCAA because we all know these rankings are ridiculous. I mean, Ohio State being number 1 in the initial set, that was absurd. Syracuse just beat them on their own home floor. My question is, what's the point? Why come out with these rankings? Because we know the committee is not going to use these and just go 1 through 44 for the at-large bids.
Right.
When they come to the NCAA tournament, why come out with these rankings when you have so many great advanced stats you can turn to? KenPom, Sagarin, KPI, BPI, strength of record. There's no point for these net ratings. When ESPN came out with that QBR, total quarterback rating thing, that made a little more sense because right now we don't really have a single catch-all stat to evaluate quarterbacks. We have plenty of numbers for college basketball teams. I don't get the point.
The two that I really look at, you mentioned first, KenPom, which is something I know we both love,
Yes.
and that's something I would constantly look to towards really how to evaluate a team. Another one would be KPI, because it essentially takes everything from the RPI and adjusts it for strength of record, which is something that that the former RPI didn't do. So it takes into account, hey, you went out and you beat this good team on the road by how much? How tough is that road environment? How tough is it to beat them by that margin? And takes all that into account where RPI just doesn't.
Yeah, RPI was brutal.
It was dead.
At least I knew what it stood for.
It never had a
Ratings
chance,
percentage index. RPI was not a great metric. They replaced it with one of the worst metrics I've ever seen in net rating. Nate Silver actually said this is the worst ranking system I have ever seen in my entire
I trust Nate Silver.
All right, so let's come up with a no pulp system. We want to talk about who the real number 1 team in the country is because there's some really good candidates this year. You look at Gonzaga, who's currently number 1. They got that Maui bump after they beat Duke in paradise. Kansas, though, started the season at number 1 in the AP poll. All they've done is beat Michigan State. They've beaten Tennessee. They're still undefeated, and they're still number 2. So who do you think should be number 1?
Right now, there's such an argument to be had for both Gonzaga and Kansas. I'm fine giving the nod to the Zags because of what they were able to do without arguably their best player in Tilly over Duke, which is a team that people were looking at and saying, oh, they could beat the Cavaliers.
Yeah.
But Kansas and what they have been doing, it's pretty much a toss-up for me. I'm fine going either way. Both of these teams, I think, are going to be the two competing for a national championship.
Yeah, I'm going to take pretty much the same stance. I think Gonzaga should be number 1. If you watch that game against Duke, I know they only won by a couple of points in the end, but that was so incredibly impressive what they did on offense especially. Rui Hachimura, I picked him a couple weeks ago to be my Wooden Player of the Year. I'm standing by that. But you said it, arguably, their best player hasn't even played yet this year in Killian Tilly.
When you're looking at the other players on this team and what they've been able to do, Josh Perkins is currently 4th in college basketball in assists, while averaging still 12 points a game.
Yeah.
And watching them beat Creighton, Zach Norvell could not miss.
Good.
He has an unbelievable shot. I would not bet against them.
Yeah, I do want to give some credit to Kansas, though, because Bill Self, I'm sure he doesn't care about the number 1 spot this early in the season. He's got to be sitting there thinking, what do we have to do?
Yeah.
I mean, they've won every game. They started number 1. It's just they didn't play in Maui. That's why they're not number 1.
Right, you have 2 top 10 wins. Gonzaga really only has 1.
Yeah.
So you've done everything that you're supposed to, and you still don't have it.
Rock chalk, but I got the Zags right now.
Yeah, it's a toss-up between both. But when we come back, we're still going to be talking some college basketball, but we're going to be telling you about a special book that you might want to check out. Could make you some dollar bills, y'all.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to No Pulp inside the Citrus TV studios. Back alongside Matt Liberman, I'm Drew Carter. Two guys, no ties, no holds barred. Already talked about UCF. No more UCF for the show. Let's keep it locked here on college basketball. We've got a brand new segment to unveil. It's called Money Lines. Gambling now technically legal for states if they want to, so we're going to talk a little gambling. Here's how this works. I'm going to give you a line, Matt, and then we'll flip. We'll go alternate, rotating. I'm going to give you a line on a game, and you tell me if you want to take that.
Okay.
So you ready to go?
Yep.
We're going to start with Michigan hosting South Carolina in basketball. I'm going to set this line. Wolverines undefeated. They've looked like one of the more impressive teams in the country. -15 for Michigan.
I would take that line for Michigan. I would take Michigan with the points. When you look at this game, South Carolina is terrible. They're also on the road. They've lost to Stony Brook. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than what they've done this year.
Yeah.
They got absolutely obliterated by Wofford. They lost by 20. When you look at Michigan, they have annihilated Villanova, annihilated UNC.
Yeah.
I think you got to take the Wolverines.
I mean, we just talked about who should be the #1 team in the country. Based only on what they've done this year, Michigan has a pretty good case.
I think Michigan should be a top 5 team right now.
They've got the best defense in the country, bar none. They've got a guy who I think is just Mo Wagner in disguise.
I think so too,
Ignis
except he has
Brazdeikis.
way worse hair.
Yeah, he does have worse hair, but more swag. I think more swag, fair to say. He's a lefty shooter.
You also look at the development of Charles Matthews and Jordan Poole.
Xavier Simpson, too.
Yeah, 3 guys that are, one, lockdown defenders and now just lights out shooters. I don't know how you defend that. How you attack that.
I'm taking Michigan with the points as well. Good call.
On to the next game, though. Auburn and Dayton. This is an interesting one. I've got the Tigers by 9.5.
Give me the Flyers.
The Flyers.
I'm going Dayton. I know Archie Miller doesn't coach there anymore. I'm still taking Dayton. I believe in the infrastructure. Auburn and Bruce Pearl. Listen, Matt, I like teams that do it the right way. I like class acts. Bruce Pearl, not a class act. This guy's been mired in controversy. I'm taking the karma bet, and I'm taking Dayton with the points. I think it's a single-digit game.
Even though Auburn's been crushing teams at home, this is Dayton going on the road. They've lost 3 in a row to Oklahoma. They've lost to Mississippi State. These are close losses against pretty good teams, but I don't know, the way that Auburn has played defense recently, and even in the showing that they put up against Duke, I like the Tigers in that one.
I think that's a good line, though. Nice job setting that line. I'll take Dayton, though.
Thank you.
Let's move on to another one. Syracuse and Georgetown, renewing that old-time Big East rivalry feel when guys were bleeding on the floor back at Manley Fieldhouse. I hope that this one is bad blood as well. I'm not going to brag here, Matt, but we were talking about Ken Pom earlier. I actually nailed the Ken Pom projected line.
Really?
I've got Syracuse by 13 points. Who are you taking?
I'm probably going to take Georgetown in this one. I think that's a little high. If you put the line at 10.5, I think I would have taken Syracuse. I think it'll barely crack double digits. Georgetown's only loss in the season is Loyola Marymount, which isn't a great program. The game is in the Carrier Dome, where Syracuse has proven in past years it's a completely different team. But Cornell just came into the Dome, and a team with no size and only one guy that can really play had a lead over the Orange with 6 minutes left. In this one, I think that Syracuse gets it done just like they did against Cornell. But I don't know if I can take it at 13.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with the Hoyas. Georgetown has proven this year they can play on the road. They've got a couple nice wins away from home. And you said Matt Morgan there for Cornell basically put the team on his back. Georgetown's got a guy who can do the same thing. Jesse Govins is one of the best players, maybe the best player in the entire Big East. Give me the Hoyas. I like it. I think Syracuse does win. Maybe sneak it out, though. Give me the Hoyas with the points.
Is it still a rivalry?
I
don't know about that one.
No, I don't think so.
Well, on to the last game, Florida State and UConn. UConn coming off of 2 losses recently. I have Florida State by 3.5 in this one.
Where's this game being played?
It's on a neutral site. It's in New Jersey.
I'm still going to take Florida State. Now, I saw UConn play in person. I'm really impressed by them. I love Dan Hurley. I love the intensity.
Fantastic coach.
I think college basketball needs more intensity. And Jim Boeheim, by the way, brought the intensity the other night in that game against Cornell. You got to love that. Dan Hurley, though, he's got that youthful exuberance. I love the way UConn defends man-to-man. I'm still going to take FSU slightly. I think the Seminoles, you could argue, are one of the 15 or 20 best teams in the country. UConn just doesn't have that talent just yet.
I think I'm going to take the Huskies just because I think that Florida State's proven an inability to really guard really high-profile guards that can really score the basketball. Jalen Adams, one of those guys.
Absolutely. I got FSU, though.
Yeah.
All right, plenty more to come on No Pulp. When we return, 1 versus 2 in women's college basketball, our expert AJ Fabry is here to break down that entire game, why Gino Auriemma might be the best coach ever in any sport. Stick around.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Welcome back to No Pulp. We have migrated to a more comfy location. Drew Carter, Matt Liberman. Now we've got our women's basketball expert, AJ Fabry, joining the show. AJ, how are these chairs, man?
These are fantastic, very comfy. I could go for maybe a couple logs on the fire, maybe a little Michael Bublé going on in the background.
We don't have that budget.
Tis the season, you never know.
Yeah, I could go for that. But right now, it is the season for women's basketball. We actually just saw one of the best games of the entire season. UConn beating Notre Dame. UConn was number 2. Notre Dame was number 1, the reigning national champs. What does that tell us about the rest of the season?
Well, one thing it does tell me, if you're going to put UConn not in that number 1 slot to begin the year, Gino Auriemma is going to be coming for someone's neck. 89-71, the final score. And this game was in South Bend. Notre Dame this year returning a lot of their starters from that national championship team from last year. But Nafisa Collier with 16 points, 15 rebounds. Katie Lou Samuelson with 15 points. And get this, Kristen Williams, true freshman, playing in her first ever road game as a UConn Husky. She drops 28 points against the reigning national champion. I mean, an absolutely incredible performance from her. And it's UConn. UConn being UConn, they go out and they mow teams down. It's only December, but clearly a huge win for this Husky team.
So what you're saying is Notre Dame just poked the bear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it was Notre Dame. I think it might have been the people who are setting the rankings at the beginning of the year. Like I said, Notre Dame not in that, or excuse me, UConn not in that 1 slot. You better watch out if you're in women's basketball.
Well, now they obviously take down the number 1 team in the country. Is it back to the way it just always is? Is it UConn versus the field now?
I mean, UConn, they're the favorite probably, but let's be real. For the last 15 plus years, UConn has always been the favorite. But there are a couple teams, obviously Notre Dame, such a talented team. They're returning a lot of starters. Then you have teams like Baylor, even Oregon. And Baylor is a really interesting team. After the Brittany Griner era ended, you know, they haven't really had much success. Their last Final Four appearance, that came in 2012. Kim Mulkey, the head woman at Baylor, she is one of the most fiery people in women's basketball, in all of basketball. Super competitive. She's got a top 5 team right now. They're ranked 4th in the country. It's going to be interesting to watch them progress through the regular season, see if they can get back. And you obviously have teams like Mississippi State and, like I said, Oregon, a team from the Pac-12. They got a girl, Sabrina Ionescu. She's one of the best point guards in the game right now. So there's always those challengers. And like we've seen in years past, anything could happen come March. But UConn, they're playing like a team possessed right now.
Yeah, so a lot of great teams in women's college basketball, but UConn kind of the cream of the crop. What's the state of the sport right now at the college level?
Well, you have to take a look at women's basketball in historical context. Obviously, it's been a top-heavy sport. But if you look in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of progress made by some of the mid-major programs. I'm going to pull out a stat for you. From 2000 to 2016, only 2 mid-major teams won NCAA tournament games. In the last 2 NCAA tournaments, 3 mid-major teams have advanced to the Sweet 16. That was Central Michigan and Buffalo last year, and the Quinnipiac Bobcats, a team near and dear to my heart, 2 years ago. So you have to give credit because these mid-majors are really closing the gap between the Blue Bloods and the top of the heap and the rest of the country. They're winning games in the NCAA tournament, and you even look at a team like Drake out of Iowa, not the tissue soft rapper from north of the border, Drake, the Monarchs out of Iowa. They just knocked off South Carolina, a big win for them. And you look at a team like Green Bay, they've actually been the equivalent to Gonzaga in the men's realm. Green Bay, a team that is always in the NCAA tournament. They're always giving the bigger programs a run for their money. So you have to look at those mid-majors. They're creeping up there in the women's basketball universe.
So they're finally creating some parity. But when you look at the NCAA tournament, I understand you have some strong feelings about this.
Listen, okay, if you look at the major basketball tournaments in America, you have the NBA and you have obviously the men's March Madness. And who do you think is going to win the NBA this year?
Probably the Warriors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For what? The third, fourth? Who cares? Year in a row. And then last year, obviously March Madness on the men's side is fantastic. You have these great upsets earlier in the tournament. Crazy, 16 seed beating a 1 seed last year. But then by the time you whittle it down to the Final Four, those games aren't as great. I mean, who was even in the Final Four last year? It was Kansas, Villanova, Michigan, Loyola, Chicago. Do you remember watching those Final Four games?
I do.
They were kind of forgettable.
They were forgettable.
Yeah.
I mean, the Villanova-Kansas game was an absolute blowout. Meanwhile, the last 2 years of the Final Four for the women's basketball, you have Mississippi State beating UConn, the top dog, in overtime on a buzzer beater. And then last year, you have Arike Ogunbowale for Notre Dame. 2 buzzer beaters back-to-back in the Final Four to knock off #1 UConn and then Mississippi State in the championship. I mean, the women's basketball tournament is one of the most entertaining tournaments going, and people just aren't recognizing it, but it's really one of the best tournaments you could be a part of.
Listen to this, man.
I know. He certainly knows his stuff. We want to thank you for your time.
Listen, next time I'm going to expect, like I said, some eggnog, maybe some logs on the fire. But listen, this was fun. But women's basketball, seriously, it's coming up big time.
Well, AJ has a lot to say about women's basketball. When we come back, we'll give our big picks for the bowl games coming up next month. Welcome back to No Pulp. Circling back to college football, we talked about the New Year's Six, we talked about the college football playoff, but there are 39 bowl games. I mean, we certainly have some other ones to talk about. We've got 3 lined up for you that we think are really good matchups, and we'll give you our picks for them. Drew, I want to start off the Camping World Bowl. West Virginia, Syracuse, who you got?
Going camping in beautiful Orlando. I'm taking Syracuse, and for one reason. West Virginia's got a couple of guys who might go pro. Heisman contender and Will Grier. David Sills, one of the best wide receivers in the country. They might not play, so give me Syracuse, who might be better anyway.
I'm taking the Orange as well. 2 really high-scoring offenses, and West Virginia doesn't have a defense to compete.
Citrus Bowl, Penn State versus Kentucky. Who you got?
I got Penn State. I don't know if Kentucky's really proven it against really great teams that can score the ball like Penn State can. Give me Trace McSorley.
Yeah, don't be silly. Give me Penn State. What's next?
Last one, Northwestern and Utah. 2 teams in their conference champions. I got Northwestern in this one. How about you?
I'm taking Utah in a landslide. You see the advanced metrics. I think they're not quite as favorable for Northwestern, so I got the Utes. He's got the Cats. That'll do it for No Pulp. He's Matt Liberman. I'm Drew Carter. We've talked about a lot tonight. We've talked college football, Georgia, UCF, women's basketball, men's basketball, all that covered on No Pulp. We'll do the same thing next time. So again, Matt Liberman, Drew Carter. We will see you next time.